Police responses to mental illness calls are a tough subject for many people to grasp, and it's a wicked problem that's basically being still trying to be solved by people all around the United States. Um, there are many instances where police could have handled things better if they had the right support with them. For instance, according to Why We Must Improve Police Responses to Mental Illness, published on March 2nd, 2020 by John Rice II on July 18, 2016, excuse me. Arnaldo Rios Soto, a man with autism, ran away from his group home. He was later found sitting in the middle of the street, and someone called the police. His caretaker, Charles Kinsey, found him. He tried to explain to the officer the situation, that Arnaldo wasn't holding a weapon, but a toy car. The police officer, in an attempt to shoot Arnaldo, shot Kinsey. This is a prime example of police response to mental illness. Granted, police don't always respond in this way, but they're limited in responses, and we'll also talk about this later. Police aren't trained to handle mental illness, which is why this is such a big problem. Um, for instance, in pairing therapists with cops in the field works, police say, why don't we do it more? Published on July 31st, 2020 by J.C. Marmaduke. Police have three approaches: a mental health hold, walk away, or charge them with a crime. These are three there's only three approaches that police have to basically combat mental illness or get to the bottom of things, because they're not dealing with a a person whose motive is really to harm anybody or anything like that. They're dealing with somebody who's struggling with mental illness. Uh, this article also talked about how mental health related calls are growing and how police are in favor of mental health response. Departments in Fort Collins, Colorado, are trying to implement this and get funding for it. The author brought up how it will take more money to support things like mid and long term care, case management, medication, counseling, and substance abuse treatment. This further explains why this is a wicked problem, because there are so many bases we have to cover uh, when trying to solve things like this. The police don't really have an easy time uh, just going to mental health calls themselves, and they could use other people with them, um, such as mental health specialists. We'll also talk about that later. Um, in my next article, police mental health collaborations, published on April of 2019, the author proposed 6 questions that law enforcement should ask themselves to develop and sustain PMHC, otherwise known as police mental health collaboration. Quote: Is our leadership committed? Do we have clear policies and procedures to respond to people who have mental health needs? Do we provide staff with quality mental health and stabilization training? Does the community have a full array of mental health services and supports for people who have mental health needs? Do we collect and analyze data to measure PMHC against the 4 key outcomes? And do we have a formal and ongoing process for reviewing and improving performance? End quote. These are 6 questions that every police department really needs to ask themselves if they're trying to start mental health collaboration or cooperation with mental health specialists, because these questions aren't easy uh, to answer, and they're definitely not easy to start to, such as, does the community have a full array of mental health services and supports for people who have mental health needs? That's going to take a little bit if you don't have it, and if you don't, are you ready to start PMHC? um, that source just further explains why this is such a wicked problem. um, Also, according to Increasing Collaboration Between Police and Mental Health Professionals, published on December 17, 2019 by Amber Widgery, crisis intervention teams involve policemen who want to volunteer to specialized training to respond to mental health calls, co-responder teams, police officers, and mental health professionals that respond to calls together as a team. There are also mobile crisis teams. These are mental health professionals who work with specially trained officers to respond to both law enforcement calls and mental health calls. Case management teams, which consist of behavioral health professionals, law enforcement officers, peers and others that can form a team to coordinate care and develop collaborative solutions to reduce repeat interactions with individuals. And finally, crisis stabilization centers, which are facilities that law enforcement use to take individuals who are having mental health crisis uh, as an alternative to jail or emergency departments. These are 5 different solutions to uh, basically attack this wicked problem we have. Just the only problem with these is how do we allocate the resources we have uh, to efficiently um, use these new sources which we can possibly use, and how do we choose which ones are can be more beneficial than the other ones. um, So now we get into the status quo, which is pretty much where we're at, either in certain places around the world or in Colorado, um, on basically attacking this problem or solving this problem. In the 4 best examples of police and mental health response published on November 21st, 2019 by, excuse me, Mary Kate McGrath in quote, in Colorado, a pilot program where behavioral health clinicians ride with police officers during 911 responses and routine patrols have been increasingly successful and is being expanded from 3 police departments to 12. In Seattle, or end quote, in Seattle, the Ostling Act in 2015, mandating CIT training for all police officers in the state of Washington, and quote, by the following year, 70% of police officers in Seattle's precincts were CIT trained, and quote, out of 9,300 crisis response incidents, fewer than 8% resulted in an arrest after the Ostling Act was was approved. Um, the CIT is crisis intervention teams, and this shows the impact that crisis intervention teams or police and mental health co-response can have on basically fixing or soothing this problem that we have. Um, Obviously, there are many different ways that we can still go about this, and there may be better ways that we don't know yet, that we could be attempting. Um, we really just don't know until we get there. But um, right now, CIT teams are uh, are looking like they're working well, and I guess all we can do is just try these other solutions if if CITs are not working in other places. Um, Overall, police and mental health response is a big wicked problem, and sometime it needs to be figured out because police can't keep responding to mental illness calls with the with what they're given. We need police officers need more uh, to better attack these problems.